Welcome back to another episode of the TikTok Famous podcast. Today, I am so excited to have on Mrs. Jackie Blankenship, otherwise known as Mrs. America 2022. She has XY chromosomes. She's an advocate. She's doing all the things, and we are talking about it today. So stay with us.
You're listening to the TikTok Famous podcast, where viral fame meets raw reality. Join your host, Meredith Willits, as she dives deep with your favorite creators to uncover the real stories behind the scroll, the highs, the lows, the algorithm chaos, and everything in between. This is not your average interview. This is the TikTok Famous podcast.
Jackie, thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored to have you on the show and talk about what we're talking about here today, because I am very passionate and I think you are the number one, in my opinion, game changer to have this conversation, because your story is so, to me, unique and you bring such a great perspective. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to talk with you.
Your story is so different. And let's add in that you were Mrs. America 2022. I mean, it's just like the perfect everything to have this conversation. So if you can give, I know your story, but if you can give new people background into who you are, where you're at, when we got rid of testes, oh my gosh, like it's such a great story. It's a great life. So go ahead and tell everybody.
Thank you. So my name is Jackie Blankenship. I am 40 years old, and I was diagnosed with complete androgen insensitivity syndrome when I was 4 years old. Now, basically, that means I have XY chromosomes that we typically see in males, but my body developed externally female because my body cannot respond to any kind of form of testosterone. So I had testes in my abdomen, even though I developed female. I didn't have a uterus, didn't have ovaries, fallopian tubes, or cervix, just the testes in my abdomen. They were creating the typical amount of testosterone that a male would create. But because my body can't process that or respond to it at all, it converted it into estrogen. And that's how I developed female. So my parents thought to have me tested through a blood test, a karyotype test, when I was only 4, because we have relatives that have this variation. And
Really?
Yeah. I have 3 aunts with it.
Get out.
Yeah, we have a big family of AIS ladies, and
wow.
So my mom thought to have me tested. She didn't know much about it. It was the late 80s. It was 1989. And no one knew what it was. She took me to the family pediatrician. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So she took me to University of Michigan Health Hospital up in Ann Arbor, and they tested me, and it came back, yeah, I had XY chromosomes. And at that point, they were still actively recommending to remove the testes from girls with this variation. They had me wait till I was 15 so I could have my natural hormone production to develop, and then they took them out when I was in 9th grade.
Wow. I'm laying in bed last night thinking about you, Jackie. And but it's so like, tell me if my brain is getting this correctly.
Okay.
We are all born female, all of us, unless that Y chromosome is put in there, which is testosterone. Because like, that's basically what your body is. It's like, okay, this thing is going forward, but there's no testosterone. So you just become a woman. I mean, like, honestly, like without that testosterone to say, don't like slow down on the boobs, slow down on the, the feminine characteristics of the face and all that. Testosterone is what makes a man a male. Without it, we get you.
Well, so typically in the womb, we all start as female, and our original path, we're all the same little embryos, right? We're all the same tiny little figures. And then our chromosomes are XX or XY or a bunch of different variations that we see, with different things that can happen to people. And once those hormones wash over us, that's when we start to develop in the womb with what we know as gender. For me, because my body didn't respond to that, even though I had that Y chromosome, I just stayed on the original path, which was female.
That is, I mean, like, I think that your aunts and other people like you are the perfect example of gray, the gray space, right? Where everyone's like, it's this or it's that. And if it's not those, then you're wrong. And this isn't a choice, like it's all of this very cut and dry. And then I've heard so many conversations, and I know everything that I'm saying, you've heard 7 billion times, which is like, you don't see this in the animal kingdom. Like, this is not the way that God made us. And my thing has always been, but it is like,
It is.
if you could be born with congestive heart issues, if you can be born, my son was born with like his stomach was connected to his lungs. If you can be born all of these different things, but then all of a sudden we're expected to believe that our our sex is the only thing in the human body that is completely cut and dry and perfect, and there's no gray area and there's no whatever. That's insanity to me.
It feels to me, especially like recently, that people have politicized the gender war so much that is why they're trying to actively have these stances, but they're not like biologists. They don't know
Right.
so people think they sound more intelligent when they say XY means male, but actually you sound less intelligent because you don't know what you're
Right.
talking about.
Yeah. So did they come up, or do they know now what makes your body say, um, I don't see testosterone, like what your testes were producing for the first 14 years of your life, and in utero, your body was like, I got nothing for you. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. They don't really have a lot of answers to what exactly causes it because it can be hereditary. Like my mom was a carrier of the gene that causes it, while my aunts obviously had the gene and have it. But there are other people that I've met who have it and they have no link, no relatives whatsoever that have it. It can be spontaneous or it can be hereditary. And then on top of that, there's just a lot of unknown about it because for so long it was looked at as a disorder,
yeah.
and because of that, when you're looking at disorder, all you're thinking about is what can we do to fix it and normalize it. So instead of studying it and looking at it like, oh, this is just another way of being, or look at all these ways we are born, we're looking at how to fix it and not studying what made it in the first place.
Yeah, and I remember when I was younger, so I'm 52. I remember when I was younger learning about like gender assignment at birth, where it's like it's kind of up in the air, and we hear about this where it's like we're not really sure if this is what the sex is based on visual. All I'm doing is looking at this newborn's visual thing, and we are going to just cut. We are going to decide, right? Hey mom, hey dad, is this a girl? Is this a boy? What does it look like more? And I remember hearing stories of like, they make that decision at birth and that's the situation. Your situation, which you talk about and are an advocate about, was when you were 14, you weren't really informed at all what was about to happen to you, and also the ramifications of this surgery. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I was 15, I was in ninth grade,
Or
and
15.
I was having the surgery. I knew I had to have this procedure. And I was simply told it's because the testes could grow tumors or get cancerous if I didn't. My parents just heard the word cancer, it scared them. And then they didn't
Yeah.
know who else to trust. And they said,
Yeah.
all right, the doctor says we have to do it. I was very ill informed on what was going on.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they did not educate me at all on what your hormones do for your body. I never even got like a little class on what is this estrogen doing for me in my development since I can't have children and I can't menstruate. I looked at it like, well, I can't have kids anyway. I can't have a period. It doesn't matter. But because I didn't know. No one
Right.
educated on what those hormones do for your body. And then when I was done with the surgery, they put me on a hormone replacement. And I remember being very confused, like, why'd you take them if you're making me
Yeah.
go on hormone replacement for the rest of my life?
Yeah. So you woke up, and now, I mean, it's not just the surgery. It's not just, and our parents, they do, I mean, I know so many people, they'll go to Mayo, they'll go to the Cleveland Clinic, they go to these big, huge hospitals, and they've got these big, huge doctors with big, huge brains. And they're like, like, what am I going to do? Like, this is the way it is.
Right.
What, now that you're an adult and know that you can like research this, what would it have done differently for you if you would have kept those testes?
Well, I would have kept my natural hormone production, which is good for your bones. It's good for your development. And on top of that, I mean, it's good for us in our intimate life to have our natural hormone production.
Okay.
Us when we go through menopause. So essentially, I went into a forced menopause when I was 15 and lost that hormone production. And every time I
Wow.
would go off my hormones or forget to refill the prescription, all that, I would go back into those menopausal side effects.
So would the testes have produced not just testosterone, because you would have had testosterone, but it wouldn't have changed your visual appearance, but it would have done
So
other things.
the testes created testosterone, and my cells can't respond to that at all. So it converted it in what's called aromatization, and it aromatized it into estrogen. So it would have just
Stop it. So if you would have kept those, it would have produced estrogen for you, and then you wouldn't have had to do all this?
Yeah, so it was producing my estrogen until I was 15, and then they removed them. So they kept them there so I could develop on a natural hormone production as long as I could before taking them.
Oh my gosh. Have you ever been in contact with anyone who has kept the testes in the abdomen, and what was their life?
Yeah,
Like, what happened with them?
I've met numerous people whose parents either were skeptical or they found out way later in life, so they didn't get them removed, and they're fine. They have no issues. They get a
Wow.
monitor once a year through like an ultrasound, and they're fine.
That is absolutely amazing. I would have never thought in a million years that it would have transformed it into estrogen.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I always look at the male, female, it's like clitoris, penis, testes, ovaries. Like, I just kind of look at it like it's the same thing, just like in and out and different. And just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just the opposite.
Right.
So when you were going through all this and through childhood, obviously you're incredibly feminine looking. Hello, Mrs. America 2022. Like, your photo that you sent me for marketing, I was like, God bless America. Like, are you kidding me?
Well,
Um,
those are my
but
photos.
what
I have myself up all of 4 times a year. I look like this the rest of the year.
I know, right? But what was that? What did you feel different as a kid? Because I didn't start my period until I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
So I 100%, and I remember hearing, growing up about what the heck's her name? The actress with the gray hair. They say that she's
Lee Curtis.
thank you. I remember Jamie Lee Curtis, and we heard all the rumors
Yeah.
growing up as kids, right? And I'm like, I'm 100% whatever that is. Because I was a sophomore, and I'm like, I'm never going to start my period. Like, I'm like, I just remember every day, like, any time now, like, there's clearly something wrong with me. And I like wasn't like that into boys because I didn't have that natural estrogen and all that stuff running through me. So as a kid growing up, did you feel different? Did other kids see you different, or were you just one of the kids?
No one knew I had this until I was probably like 30 when I came out with it.
Oh,
Yeah. So this was something I didn't talk about. I've only been talking about the last 10 years or so.
so there was did your mom say, don't tell people you have testes? So
Well, I
it was,
for testes in the beginning because they only refer to them as gonads, which is
okay.
another for that. But I didn't know gonad meant testy. I thought it was like a different word for ovary, which I guess it kind of is too. I didn't realize because they were very careful with their words because they still were following practices from like the 70s where studies show if we use hyper feminine language and talk to her in a certain way, she'll identify that way and it'll be, she'll be a woman because we're going to take her testes and make her a woman. But like
Yeah.
I already was. I didn't think of myself as anything but a girl. And
Yeah.
yeah, growing up, no one knew I had this. You couldn't tell by looking at me. I developed my natural estrogen production from the testes, developed me like all my friends. I wasn't delayed.
Yeah.
I had boyfriends like my friends. I was
Yeah.
girl. No one would have known until I told them. So most people knew I couldn't have children because the surgery was pretty invasive at the time. So I told people I had my ovaries removed, and so they thought I had a hysterectomy due to cysts.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you talk to your parents about this, do you talk to them about this now? Like, obviously, you're an advocate, you're all over social media, like, you're viral constantly. What do they say about you coming out with this and being so open and vocal about it at this time?
They're proud of me and they love seeing it and they share it and all that, but we don't really talk about it a lot one on one. To be honest, it's a lot easier to talk to my phone and talk to you than it is to talk to like close relatives and loved ones.
Yeah. It isn't that weird? Like, I'm always like my husband will be like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Go watch TikTok."
Yeah. Like, what's happening? What's going on? What did you post on TikTok today? I'm like, you just go watch it. Like, we don't have to like talk about
I
it.
know, isn't that the weirdest thing? It's like our own, like, therapist, like, we're
Yeah.
millions of people are our therapists as we just talk about it. Um, so then you're moving through life, you've got your surgery, you're on your estrogen, you're growing as a female, um, and now it's, time to, like, date. Do we talk about this to people we're dating? Like, how does that work? Like,
Oh, I was encouraged to keep it a secret by medical providers, and my parents would just tell me this is very, very personal. This isn't something you tell people. They didn't really tell me I had to keep it a secret, but they encouraged me to not tell people. And so most of my
probably for your safety. I mean, we see what happens to trans
yeah,
men, trans women. It is very dangerous.
right.
Many are hurt, if not killed. So, I mean, I'm sure they're looking out for your safety, but you also are getting into intimate relationships with, like, let's say your husband, for example. Like, when do you tell him?
So by the time I was with my husband, I had kind of like wanted to give up on dating. I was
Wow.
emotionally wrecked from some bad long-term relationships, and all of them knew I had a difference that made it so I couldn't have kids, but
Mhm.
that was about all they understood. And I was just best friends with my husband. We met at a restaurant we worked at, and we were friends for a solid year or two, and I just hung out with his crowd. Me and him were inseparable buddies, and he was like in love with me, so he already
Mm,
knew everything that I knew, at least, about having complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, because I told him. And he
okay.
kind of wore me down, nagged me. He wanted to date, and I was scared of losing this really positive relationship I had in my life by turning
Yeah.
it into a romantic relationship, because I'd had just a few bad experiences in the past. And I was just like, I felt more comfortable being alone and having him than anything else. So the thought of losing him though became scary, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try it.
Yeah. Now, for when you did Mrs. America and you just did you always do pageants, or was that your, like, first one?
No, I started in pageants when I was like 12.
Okay. So you were an old hat for that. Um, but then you decided to make this a platform.
Yeah, so I did Mrs. pageants, the Mrs. circuit, I guess you'd say, when we first got married. And my original platform was about infertility awareness and loss, because I can't have kids. But I
Yeah.
didn't feel very connected to it because my predicament was a lot different. And
Yeah.
even my journey to have children as someone who is infertile is a lot different than your average person who goes through infertility. So I felt not very connected to it, and I struggled to like really own that platform. And it wasn't until I was Mrs. Michigan and went to Mrs. America that I said, you know what, I'm just going to live this out loud and tell people about it, because it's like an
It's
interesting
the
thing about
truth.
truth, and most people don't know about it, and I want to educate people.
What were the responses from the production of the pageant and the other pageant members?
Everyone was really supportive. I think people were a little confused by it. Some people who only like heard it in passing or got, little clips of like what I was talking about, I think they were like, what is she talking? Like they didn't even understand it, which is because it's not something talked about very often.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everyone was pretty supportive of it. I felt like I got almost too much support, where I was like, no one's even batting an eye at this. But then I go on social media and people are so cruel about other people's gender, and people who are in the Olympics who have intersex conditions that they think look too masculine, the horrible things they jump to conclusions and say about these people. So it sometimes I need to remind people, just because I developed and present myself super, super feminine doesn't make me like a better intersex person.
Right.
You
Right.
accept everybody with these different variations.
Yeah. I think that to me, like I was saying at the beginning, is we need to understand that just because it isn't this syndrome, if you will, like I have this syndrome, it is documented. This is what it does to me or did to me in my body. That there can be variants of chemistry, variants of hormones that would make I mean, we've all seen the videos or the photograph. I just saw a video yesterday. It was like, we all have that one photograph as a child that just outs us, right? And it was this big, huge guy. And it was a picture of him when he was probably like 14, wearing like a skirt and a bikini top. And he's like dancing like this, and he was a gay guy. And he's just like, oh God, like that's that photo, right? And I think that we do need to understand that there are so many people that we can look at, when they're 3 years old, when they're 7 years old, and you're like, oh yeah, that kid's gay, or that kid is more feminine, or whatever the thing is. And then it makes sense because we're there watching it before our eyes and going, yeah, this kid is whatever, right? And I think that that's what so many people fear, right? Because
Yeah.
that's it. It's all about fear. That's what people fear, is the unknown. They fear the whatabouts and the what if my kid. And so like that just can't exist. But when you spend time with people, like you're saying, your other pageant members, the pageant people, and they get to know you and they see you and you're in the dressing room and you're doing all the things and they're just like, what's the big deal? I know this person. This is not an issue. But when we see it on the news and we can point fingers and we can judge from afar and we don't understand it, it's easy to go, that's wrong, that's right, that's not of God or whatever. And it's just like, how can we have blonde hair, dirty blonde hair, red hair, dark red hair, black hair, brown, but then everything else is yes or no?
Right.
It's impossible.
It
And
is.
we're literally taking down an entire population of people who are dealing with this. I remember having this conversation with somebody and thinking, no one wakes up in the morning, in my opinion, and says, today I want to be a boy or a girl, and upend my entire life.
Yeah, no. That's not, no one wants to be ostracized by their community. No one wants to go through hardships for being different.
No. No one's waking up and saying, "You know what? I'm going
Oh,
to." Yeah. No one wants to do that. No one, like it's one thing if you get a haircut, and you're like, "Okay, I wanna buzz my
right.
head today. I wanna, mess some shit up. I wanna move out west. I wanna sell everything I own and, like, backpack through, Europe." This is not that. This is huge, and I've always looked at it that this is not a choice. I don't know if you're on the horrific side of TikTok where all we're talking about now is groypers and transmaxing. But that's a whole new conversation of,
Oh my
if you're
God.
not there, Jackie, oh my God, it's a whole like
Yeah.
it's a very different conversation than what we're having. It's a very it's like it's almost like if you take someone and you put them in prison and they become the girlfriend.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So that is a very different subset, and I hope that people recognize, as this is probably gonna become a bigger conversation with this Charlie Kirk stuff, it's this whole alt-right transmaxing. This is a very different conversation than the trans community and what you and I are talking about
Well, I
about
think
here.
everyone wants to make everything extreme. And so both political sides share the most extreme versions of everything, which is usually the most rare.
Yeah.
And instead of looking at your everyday person, because your everyday intersex person is probably more like me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we need to be very clear that there are obviously very, like you said, extreme versions on both sides
Oh,
of
yeah.
this conversation, without a doubt. So, what made you decide to go on TikTok besides the fact that, like, my first video of you was you running
Yeah.
and you're like, da, 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 da. I'm sure that was your first huge viral, maybe not, but I remember that's where I found you.
Yeah. I had gotten, you know, 300,000 views, 400,000 views, but I never gotten anything like that until that video which shocked me. I was shocked that one blew up the way it did. But I turned 40 and I was still grappling with a lot of issues, I think. And I mean, I probably always will be at this point. And I just decided maybe I should talk about this more on, see if it helps somebody. And
Yeah.
that's really all it came down to.
Yeah, I think that that's so huge, and I think that you can find that when you are on a lot of social media, that there are a lot of people that wanna come out and help. Like, there's no agenda. I wanna talk about this, I wanna share my story, I wanna get this out there, maybe it'll help someone understand, especially someone like yourself who has such a public persona. You're also on television, you do news and things of this nature, to explain that in Michigan.
I used to be a television reporter, and now I'm a radio host here in
Okay.
Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I'm on a classic rock station.
I love that for you. But yeah, I think that, the more we talk about these types of things and are introduced to people like yourself, like everybody, like we all have a story and it's so valuable. And if there is some kid out there, you know, when you were growing up, did your aunts talk about this? Like, were you in conversation when you were 11, 12, 5, 13
No,
and say,
no,
no?
they still don't. They don't want to talk about it, which is fine. That's everyone's, right. They were pretty severely traumatized back in the 60s when they were diagnosed. It was a different time. A lot of different language was used. It was scarier. They found out in a more shocking manner. It wasn't like a karyotype test. It was like an appointment when they didn't have their periods at like 17. So it
Oh,
was
wow.
a different experience. And I think they've put it past them. They're in their mid 70s now. And I think they're trying to
Oh,
just live their life. And that's great. I I found it frustrating going on the apps and not seeing anyone like me and having this and thinking there's no representation. And this little bit of representation I would find, and not that this is wrong, but would always be usually a queer person. And I still didn't feel like I was finding someone that I could relate to
mhm.
because I am what I consider a cisgender woman. And
Yeah.
I'm married and I have a family. And I don't find any other, people that I relate to in that way where I'm like, yeah, we have so much in common. We're misunderstood. And so I wanted to be that person. And the amount of people with this variation that have messaged me that are just like me, they're married, they have adopted 2 kids, but they don't talk about it for the same reasons. They've never seen anybody that they felt like represented them.
Right, and I think that that's important too, is that, like you said, you're not trans.
No.
You're a cis woman who was born and has all the parts and all the things, and you just can't have children. What was that like when you decided to have kids or
Um, it was
have
like
children?
I always knew I couldn't have kids. I knew that was the first thing I learned about the having this variation. So I always knew it. Um, and when we got married, I guess I envisioned myself being a mom. I didn't know how I'd get there. I just knew I would someday. And one of my aunts that has this did adopt 2 children, so I saw her become a mom, and I knew it was possible. It wasn't until my sister offered to carry a baby for
Mm.
us that I realized, oh, that's a route we could take. So we did do, donor eggs and went to the fertility center and did all that. And it worked in our favor, but it was a long road because we did go through some, loss, and we had to do 3, 4 rounds of IVF to get there.
Wow.
So that was a journey in and of itself. But frankly, if I'm being honest, it was a very easy journey for me considering the barriers that were put in my way. Like
Yeah.
realistically, we got married in 2013 and we had our daughter in 2016.
Oh, wow.
We didn't
Yeah.
start until 2014, halfway through 2014, 2015. I mean, it was like I just am very blessed.
Yeah. And how many kids do you have?
One.
Aw, that's awesome. Did one of the things that I love, and it's just now it's you to me when I see you pop up, is someone asking a question, and then you're like, you repeat their question, and then you say, "Let's talk about it." And it gives me Mr. Rogers vibes. Like it makes me feel like we're sitting down and we're going to talk about it, and I appreciate your question, and it might be an edgy question, it might have been a jerk question, doesn't matter. Like you're like, "All right, let's talk about it." Um and it's going right to my gut of so much like courage that you have to really just meet all of this so head on and not skirt the issues. And obviously, you've had a lot of time to maybe digest and think about how you feel about all of this. And that's why you're able to just be very forthcoming and live in your truth. I think that that's what's so important is living in your truth, because then you can be happy. It's when you're faking what they say, what you're as sick as your secrets, right? And so as we have these secrets, they start to eat at us. And, then we got to pretend and we have to make ourselves smaller and we have to remember what we said last time. But when you come with that and you're like, let's talk about it, I think that that's so vulnerable and so brilliant and so head on. How has your community grown from your let's talk about it?
I think the TikTok community is super supportive, and the people that have followed me and joined the conversation have all been really cool and wanted to learn more. The more unintelligent questions that I get regularly, a lot of them, they don't shock me or upset me even. To be honest, I'm just like surprised that we still live in a time where people grow up thinking it's okay to ask and talk that way, because they like literally are just ignorant to the social norms. It feels like that's not something you would typically ask somebody as blatant as that in a
Yeah.
comment where everyone can see your photo. it's it's just funny that, like, I mean, all right, if you want to share it, I'll share it up here and reread it and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Have you ever, I've gotten myself in a pickle on social media by making a comment. Have you ever felt like nervous? You are a public figure. Like I'm essentially no one, right? In the sense of like I'm not on TV, I'm not on the radio, I'm not in the news. So like I'm just me in my bubble that does things on social media and podcasting. Have you ever been nervous like, "Oh, this person is not well," like a
Um,
commenter?
no, not yet. I have gotten a few, and normally I just hit the block button and walk away. I actually got that more working in local radio the last 15 years.
Get
I did
out.
that more with people that would come see me repeatedly at events and stuff than I've got it from TikTok.
Yeah. I actually have someone just recently that's just like commenting a little bit too much. And I'm just like, you start to see like the over and over and over and
Yeah,
over and over. And you're like, okay, this is like making me a little bit anxious, social media can be a great place, but it also can be like an intimidating because I just actually had a guy from TikTok play music at my house, and being a creator, and he's also a creator, and I felt like I knew him,
hmm
but I could also tell that he's like, because we're mutuals, but I could also feel like how weird that must feel that I know him, but he sort of knows me, but I really don't know him. I felt that really weirdness, like, oh, this is how people must feel when they see me.
I think. Okay, so I just watched that documentary that they did on Amazon for what's his name, William White. Have you seen it yet?
I'll have to watch it.
He's the viral TikToker that basically just lip synced 80s songs.
Get
Very
out.
young man, and he got a
Oh,
huge
yes, yes, I know who that is. Yes, yes, yes.
so he got a huge mass following, and it ended up getting this group of women all over 40, 45, and he was
Yeah,
21, who just obsessed over him, and they were giving him hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And he was just like, thanks. And he'd say thank you, but they got more and more enmeshed in his life until he was like, I don't think, because he's so young, I think he was like 22, that I don't think he even knows how to respond to that kind of fame and that kind of like interaction he's doing with these women. It was
yeah,
something to see because they felt like they knew him because they'd watch him on live and on Twitch. But you don't really know someone because you watch them for an hour, even an hour a day.
right. Right, and there I mean, I remember he had, like, the baby dreamy eyes and kinda
Yeah.
gave the side glance. Yep, yep. Yeah, and it is weird when people are like, they know you because they're watching all your videos, and they think that they have the full story, and they don't. Your husband, you've brought on some of your videos, and, it looks like you're on the front porch for the one that I was watching. What does he think about you being on social media and sharing this? Because you're essentially sharing his life as well.
Yeah, he's used to it because when I started in radio, it was like 2009, and social media was a lot different in like '08 to 2011, 2012. We didn't have all the options. We had Facebook and Twitter, and that was all you
Yeah.
had. And a lot of people used blogs. So I was like the OG blogger. I was one of the first people on Twitter at the time, and I was just getting into radio and had my own show, like a music show on the weekends, and I interned on our morning show in the weekdays. So he was very much used to me sharing our dating life to the public in what felt like a very public setting on radio, on a syndicated morning show, as well as on like
Yeah.
my blog and all that, and getting a lot of stuff through that. And I think he's just so used to that this is just another medium and a different conversation we're having, and he's just used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I myself, my husband and I, we started a, podcast series just, like, on my other podcast, and we were just talking about our lives, and, like, I really don't share a lot about my life.
Yeah.
I just talk about whatever. But I could feel like in the podcast, I'm like, I felt like we're not being honest because I felt like there's so many things about his life we can't talk about, like his job, like he worked for the White Sox. And so there was so many things that were like maybe the stressors of our life or the this of our life. And I'm like, we can't talk about that. We can't talk about this. We can't. I'm like, this is stupid. There's literally no point in us doing a podcast because we're not talking about anything that we're dealing with
Right.
because we can't talk about it. So like, yeah, it can be really difficult. What is you said you had a daughter?
Yeah, her name's Greenlee. She's in fourth grade. She's 9. She loves, so she's, she likes going on YouTube and watching YouTube, and she understands. She's never been on TikTok, but she knows what it is. So she thinks it's cool that mom's on TikTok. But
Oh,
she
I love that.
that I can't have babies in my belly, and then she knows what the word intersex is because she hears me talk about it. But I'm sure she doesn't have a full grasp on it yet at only 9 years old. But
Yeah.
I think that it's cool that she's been part of the conversation and hearing it.
Yeah. And now can you get her tested to see if she has this or how does that work?
Well, so we use donor eggs. She's no relate, not biologically
Oh, okay.
related.
I didn't know if you use your sister's eggs.
No, no, we use donor.
Okay, so you use donor eggs. That makes sense. So what would be like 5 things that you would want listeners, viewers to know about y- intersex or, all of these conversations that are out there that people are, you know, putting the flag in the ground and saying, this is what it is. This is what life is. What would you want them to know?
So I think one of the big things is to understand that there are 40, as of right now, 40 known variations for intersex people, and I just have one. So I have one of over 40 things that a child can be born with that's considered intersex, and recognizing that maybe we're all born in variation as it is, and gender is going to be on a spectrum like that, just what it is, and that we've identified it as this is that and this is that. But like you could be not intersex per se, have not even have a Y chromosome, but maybe you produce too much testosterone. I know women who maybe get a little facial hair, right? Because of their
Yeah.
maybe they're stronger or bigger, and that's their natural body. But should we really be shaming them over that? Like, no, absolutely not. And I
I
think that understanding that, like, even though that might not be considered intersex, that's the kind of, spectrum we're looking at in terms of gender, is like redefining what you think of as gender.
40 different types. You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I know. I don't know them all. So, but I do know there's 40. And I did meet a geneticist once that told me there's way more than 40, but we can't tell you that because we don't have names for all of them yet. But there's way more.
And if you think about it, like, who's going to get tested? Like, even if you're born, like you're saying, and you're born female presenting since birth, but like you're saying, you're very strong. Maybe you do have like the facial fuzz, things of that nature. And PS, as we get older and our estrogen drops, that's when you start
Yeah,
seeing the male pattern balding. Like, I've got, this coming back here as I'm, past 50. We just kind of like fluff it up and move it forward. And we do get the different, like, hey, daughter, let me know if I got that chin hair. Like, we've all heard these conversations, right? And that's because our estrogen is dropping, our testosterone is trying to find itself. No person is going to get their 12-year-old, their 18-year-old, whatever. They're saying, I have boobs, I have a vagina, I'm a girl. However, they may have some sort of biological precursor that makes them feel more masculine, and then, i.e., maybe is attracted to the different gender. There's so many variables and variants and things of that nature that can cause you to be attracted
right.
to the same sex based on your increased testosterone or your increased estrogen. I mean, it's so stupid, but as we're sitting here having this conversation, it's like what I said at the top was, it only makes sense.
Right. It
That
is. It's just there's so many different ways to be, and 99% of us are just trying to live our lives. And I think over politicizing everything is the culprit of why this has become so taboo to talk about.
yeah. I mean, it kind of makes you feel like sick to your stomach. Like, why is this even a conversation outside of how do we just help everyone belong? I saw here in my town, and it wrecks me, um, with them taking the books or trying to take the books. I've always received a letter in the mail or an email from my town school system, like, hey, do you want your child to participate in sex ed?
Yeah.
Hey, do you want your child to read this book? It has these themes in it. And I'm always like, yes,
Yeah.
real world, sign them up. Don't give a shit. Um, and recently, they have been pushing here in my town to have books removed from the library, classroom. And it was funny because they did this, and the school system replied, because she made it appear as if she had made this huge change and she's bringing all this change to the community. And the school system's like, we've been doing this since 2016,
Yeah.
but okay. Like you're not changing anything.
Right.
But it makes me sad because there are so many, my daughter's boyfriend has two moms. And so that's a very real conversation in our house. It's a very normal thing in my family. Everyone is treated with kindness, respect, and understanding. These conversations are very normal in my house. But there are children out there that have two moms, that have two dads, that are maybe trying to figure out who they are themselves.
Right.
And these books help 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds to read about their classmates or read about themselves in real time, so that it's not when their two moms show up at, parent teacher conferences or back to school day, they're not pointed at. And I think that when we remove this type of education with humans that do exist,
Right.
just because you remove the books, you're not removing the people.
Right.
Just because you remove the conversation, you're not removing those kids' classmates and families. And I think that othering anyone is detrimental not only to our children from cis hetero families, but it's detrimental to our children because you're making them unaware of the world around them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't know why people want to shield their kids from knowing the truth about what happens around them. It's weird.
Yeah, did you see Snoop Dogg was like, how did they put this on I think it was a Disney movie. Like I wasn't expecting to have this conversation with my kid about it was like two moms. I don't even know what the hell it was. And he was like all freaked out. It's like, well, great. Now you
Yeah.
can have a conversation about that.
Yeah, now you can talk about it.
Teachable moment. Yeah, I think that the more as I'm sitting here, I'm like, Jackie needs to write children's books.
I don't know if that's in my alley or not. I know that people make it a bigger deal talking to their kids about things than it needs to be, because 9 times out of 10, things like that maybe my daughter hasn't heard of before come up on a show or a movie, and she rarely bats an eye. Like,
Totally. It's us.
hear that someone had two moms. She just go, "Oh, they have two moms instead of a dad." I go, "Yeah, some people have that." "Oh, okay." It's not like people make it weirder than it needs to be.
Yeah, no, it's definitely us. It's definitely our hang up.
Mm-hmm.
My son, my husband and I, we were watching that show on Netflix, Catfish, the
Oh
one
yeah.
about the mom. Oh, Jesus. And the text messages that the mom was sending. So my son's sitting next to me and he's 14 and he's just like, that mom's really weird.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of discomfort just because of the sexual
Well,
nature of her text.
texts that she was sending were like very graphic.
Very graphic, and so I was just like, "Yeah, buddy, some people are, not well and whatever." But I always look at these things as teachable moments to like,
Absolutely.
"Hey, like this is just the way that the world is, and I think more conversation is better." And I so appreciate everything that you bring to social media that you brought to me on my For You page so that I am a more informed person. And now knowing that there's 40 different variations of this and more, and I hope everyone listening, everyone watching can have this conversation in their homes and start normalizing the fact that not everyone's life looks like yours. And maybe your life that you just, maybe you even have questions about, maybe you're one of those 40,
Right.
and maybe you've always questioned and said like, why am I feeling this way? Or why do I look this way? Or why does my body experience life this way? Maybe we're all on this 40 spectrum and we
Right.
just
Like,
don't know it.
and you just don't know it. I mean, a lot of people go through, I know a lot of young women who did not realize they had the variation I have until they were past puberty. And they only discovered it because they didn't have a period.
See, that was me at 15.
Yeah. Yeah.
Panicking. What
Just like
is wrong
that.
with me? Where's my period? Yeah. So like, I mean, like 15 years old, that's very late to have a period. So I was freaking out. Like some of my
Yeah.
friends were like 8 years old, 11 years old, and I'm over here, sophomore in high school. But what's so weird about it, if you think about it, if you just like press pause on that for a moment, my mom never took me to the doctor and said, "Where's my daughter's period? She's a sophomore."
When it happens.
But think about that. Think about if we started normalizing, like, hey, there's like different variations, and like, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it, as Jackie Blanks would say.
Won't have one. And that'll be okay too. But let's make sure that this is how your body should be functioning.
Yeah, it's about health and it's about mental health. And I think that you just are just such a wonderful example of I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I've done all these things, I'm successful, I'm on the radio, I've been on television, I was, crowned Mrs. America 2022, and also I have this androgen, what is it? Androgen
And
sensitivity? Insensitive. I'm like, I know I'm gonna say sensitivity, and that makes
oh,
absolutely the opposite sense. Insensitivity syndrome. And so I appreciate you bringing this conversation today to my listeners, to my viewers, and I appreciate you sharing your story and being so incredibly, it sounds stupid, but brave, but also vulnerable. So thank you so much for that.
thank you. I appreciate the chance to talk about it.
I love it. Keep talking. I see children's books. I know a bunch of authors that you can talk to on TikTok. They'll help you with all the things to get your story out there. Like, I was born with gonads.
Right.
There's the title.
Like,
Miss America, Mrs. America was born with gonads. Now go live your life. I love that so much. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Mrs. Jackie Blanks, for being here today and sharing your incredible story, your vulnerability, your teaching, and everything that you do on TikTok and everywhere around. I'll see you guys here next week. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the TikTok Famous Podcast with Meredith Willett. If you're loving the unfiltered stories and behind-the-scenes truths, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show. Until next time, let's get famous.